Sustainability by Design in Digital Transformation, Digital and Technology Trends for 2024, and the first two chapters of my new book called The Final Countdown. Those are just a few things we're going to share with you today on episode number 134 of Transformation Ground Control.
This is Transformation Ground Control, your source for all things business, technology, strategy, and change. If you're growing your business, leading change within your organization, or undertaking any sort of operational or technology change initiative, this podcast is for you. This show covers what you need to know about digital transformation, organizational change, operational improvement, and business growth.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 134. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. And with me today, as always, is my co-host, Kyler Cheatham. Kyler, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you again for being here. And this is the podcast that has everything to do with digital transformation, including digital strategy, the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation. So thank you for being here today. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as on audio podcast platforms throughout the world. You can also go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to see the aggregated place where all those formats are all shared on there. So that's probably the easiest thing if you want is just go to transformationgroundcontrol.com and you can see and listen to past episodes of the show as well. So we've got a great show for you today. We're going to start off our opening segment with some audience questions as well as two hot topics. We're going to get into why sustainability by design is key to success in digital transformation, as well as what is the actual business value of digital transformation. We're going to talk about those two things in the opening segment along with audience questions. And then later in the show, our first guest will be AV from a company called Avero Advisors, and he's going to be with me on the show talking about digital and tech trends for 2024 and beyond. So the emerging technology and the trends that you need to be aware of as you define your digital strategy and your digital transformation plans for 2024 and beyond. And then last but not least, in the third segment of the show here today, we're going to share with you the first two chapters of my new book, which is called The Final Countdown. And it's a book about digital strategy and how to define the digital strategy. That book will be released on August 25th. You can actually pre-order the book now, though, on Amazon. If you go to Amazon and search my name or search The Final Countdown, you can also go to thefinalcountdown.com, which is the website for the book as well, if you'd like to learn more about the book. So we're going to share with you the first two chapters, give you sort of a sneak peek of why you should buy the book. And if you're so inclined, you can buy the book on Amazon for a discounted rate on the pre-sale rate that we have for you. And we'll share that with you later today as well. So before we get to our guest and our other topics later in the show, Kyler, let's talk through some of the questions that you have from the audience jar or the question jar here today.
Yeah, right. The question jar. Well, you'll see the question jar is a little light today, which is not a bad thing. You just had some very lengthy questions. This week, I should say, was a big question week, which is very exciting for me. So I have some on my phone as well. So it's the metaphorical question jar, if you will.
Yes.
But if you're new here, you can ask Eric direct questions on this podcast. You can post on any of the Third Stage social media or his social media questions in the comments. You can also comment wherever you're joining us today. And our team goes back and pulls all of those comments for future episodes. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it.
So you're digitally transforming the question jar. Is that what you're saying?
I know. I started
your
writing it and I thought to myself, like, what would EK do in this situation as I'm writing out all these questions? I'm like, is this really efficient? So some of them are on a digital based phone, but it's still very much audience based, great content. So this is a really interesting one that's from your TikTok channel. And you do a TikTok series about why project managers get fired. And I was actually laughing as I pulled this because you do an intro about project managers get fired and you hear you're fired and that's the worst reason you can have. But that specific video doesn't go into the top reasons why. So there's at least 5 comments on there saying, why did they get fired? Why did they get fired? Why did they get fired? So I thought I would do our audience a favor and ask you, what are some of the top reasons project managers get fired?
Yes, that I thought that was funny too. That you have to go watch the other videos, obviously, to know where I was going with that one clip. Um, but yeah, so you wonder, what is it that gets project managers fired? I mean, I think a lot of times people assume it's because they don't know how to quote unquote manage a project. They don't have the project management hard skills, and that's a challenge for some. But it's usually not the reason why they get fired. It's usually not because they don't know how to manage a Gantt chart or to track milestones and that sort of thing. I think it's because they don't. The biggest reason is because they don't understand the art of project management, especially as it relates to a digital transformation, or specifically as it relates to a digital transformation. So, in other words, knowing that it's not just a line item on a task list that you check off that yes or no, we got it done. It's the qualitative side of it of, did we do it good enough? And, there's so many activities that you need to do in a digital transformation that technically maybe it's completed, but to the inexperienced project manager, if you don't recognize that, yeah, you did it, but you didn't do it in a way that's aligned with the business needs, or didn't capture the requirements the way the business actually works and that sort of thing, then that you're going to miss that nuance. And even though on paper it looks like you're tracking the project really well, the project could still fail. So I think understanding the art and the science of project management is probably the biggest reason. And then along those lines, I guess the second big reason is not focusing enough on organizational change and some of the non-technical aspects of the transformation. That's another big one. Another one is getting overrun by the system integrators and the software vendors. So the big third-party technical providers that have a vested interest or a self-interest in pushing software into your organization as fast as possible. If you don't manage them, in addition to your own internal resources, you have to manage those third-party resources just as aggressively, probably even more aggressively. If you don't do that well, then that's oftentimes leads to project managers getting fired. And then, of course, there's the usual, like, over budget, over delayed timelines and that sort of thing, which is more of a symptom of some of the other things I talked about. But that's oftentimes the straw that breaks the camel's back. When a project goes over budget and isn't delivering business value, that's going to get a project manager fired too. But the reasons why those things happen often trace back to those other things I mentioned. So those are a few of the things I talk about, which you can learn more about watching my YouTube video, where I go into that in detail as well.
Yeah, definitely great kind of pre-work for any project manager, future, present, that wants to look at how do you even optimize. That's really the point of the video, is making sure that you're creating good behaviors. So with that, I want to go into a few. We seem to have struck a nerve on our $100 million SAP to Oracle implementation failure that we talked about in a few episodes back. And I want to kind of ask you some of the questions that we have on here, and maybe we can convince Eric to go in and make a few duet answers here, because these are some great questions. But this one basically is a comment that I want to get your feedback. So Good Guy Greg said, every single ERP transition project in a Fortune 500 enterprise costs 9 to 10 figures and always fails. What's your reaction to that?
9 to 10 figures. So he's saying it's going to cost $1 billion potentially for, is that right? Yeah. 10 figures would be $1 billion or more. I've seen some that are $1 billion or more, but I would not say that every Fortune 500 is in that range. But I'd say most Fortune 500s are going to be in the $100 million plus range, which might seem astronomical to many. But I mean, if you think about a large, complex global organization, it's going to cost a lot of time and money. But I think, there's some reality that a big Fortune 500 company is just complex. And by definition, it's going to be expensive and timely or time intensive to implement. But I think the problem with Fortune 500 companies is they tend to let their projects get out of control on a massive scale, which is really weird, because you'd think that they, of all companies, would have the resources and the manpower to tighten the ship and to tighten the reins on a project, but they tend to let things just sort of go. And maybe it's because there's so many people and so many players and decision makers that it's harder for them to make definitive decisions like, hey, let's pause the project, or let's slow down the tempo and scale back on our outside consultants to go at a slower pace. That those kinds of decisions, I think, are a lot harder for big organizations to make. So I don't know if that's really answering the question or the comment, but that's sort of my knee-jerk reaction to the comment there.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said that though ERP or digital transformation projects are complex, sometimes just the entity and culture of those bigger organizations can overcomplicate them. A lot of times to lead to a bunch of different work streams that might not be as efficient, or too many kind of project leaders in the core team as well. So we've seen kind of a lot of those inefficiencies, which is so important to the phase zero planning to really make sure you have all that mapped out before it kind of grows and snowballs and gets out of control. So definitely a great comment. So one more that I'm going to bring up today, which is your users have been spicy this week, Eric. So I want to ask you about one of these. It's kind of calling you out. It says 1,000 ERP implementations. I'm calling BS. 10 implementations would make you an expert. 1,000 seems ridiculous. If you provide purely consulting, maybe say 100. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to respond to that in referencing your 1,000 ERP implementations guidebook, which this is all about. And we actually have that linked below. It's one of our top most requested assets. So highly recommend it, even if we're going to let Eric respond to this controversy in the marketplace.
Yeah. It's I've heard that comment and that challenge before to the 1,000 plus implementations I've been involved with. I think a lot of times people think of the traditional way of being involved in a project is you get assigned to a project and you're on it for full time for 2 or 3 years or whatever. In my case, early in my career, I was in that role, but in the last 15 years 15 or more years, I've always been involved with multiple projects at any given time. And right now our company Third Stage has about, I think at any given time, we have about 40 to 50 active clients and active implementations we're involved with. We have expert witness work as well as actual implementation work and software selections. And in addition to that, we do a lot of industry stuff where we're consulting sort of without the meter running, if you will, to organizations that are considering our services or that we talk to on a daily basis for business development purposes. So at any given time, I mean, we touch hundreds of clients every year, and that number is actually low. 1,000 is probably more like 2,000 now when you consider all the different organizations we interact with and that I've interacted with in some capacity over the last 20, 25 years. But having said that, to the person's point, there's no way that I could have hands-on managed full-time 1,000 implementations. That is ridiculous. I don't know anyone that could possibly do that in a lifetime. But being on an executive steering committee for multiple projects at any given time and having touched multiple projects at any given time, they do add up. And when you've got 50 active projects at any given time, and we're constantly adding new clients and cycling through clients, you can see how those numbers will add up over time. That's where we come up with the 1 to 2,000 figure.
And I think really the key nugget there is that implementations often get categorized for very large enterprise-wide technology projects. And we see many other implementations that truly should be given the same amount of effort, resources, and intention go by the wayside because they're considered something like quote unquote an upgrade. And it leads to a lot of disruption in business processes. So I think there's kind of the silver lining of opening the door to that conversation of a technology implementation might not be a very big, complex ERP project. It might be, a different level of bringing in new technology to a specific department or a specific job function. Those types of different things still need to be intentionally planned and understood.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Well, good. Well, speaking of understood, we're going to go into a few really interesting hot topics. I'm really excited for this conversation. I know, Eric, you're excited to kind of address these trending topics in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hit a couple of those hot topics. One being why sustainability by design is key to digital transformation success, as well as what is the actual value of digital transformation. Those are the two hot topics we'll get to here in just a moment. And then later in the show, after we get through those hot topics, we're going to have our first guest, who is AV from a company called Avero Advisors. He's going to be joining me to talk about digital and technology trends to be aware of and ready for in 2024 and beyond. And then later in the show, our last segment, we'll share the first 2 chapters of my new book called The Final Countdown, which you can pre-order now on Amazon for a discounted rate. If you'd like the electronic copy, you can pre-order it now for a discount. You'll receive the electronic copy once it's released officially on August 25th of this month. So stick around. We're going to share with you the first couple chapters. You can see sort of a sneak peek of the book, or hear a sneak peek of the book as well. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Could you whisper in my ear the things you want to feel? I'll give you anything.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Anything you ever dreamed to be complete. Yes, I have enough that far.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 134. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. So we've got some hot topics you wanted to cover here today. Kyler, what have you got in store for us?
Yeah, so I want to talk about the concept of sustainability by design. I really like these hot topics because, as you all know, I really like data behind having these conversations. So both of these hot topics are built on newly released surveys. So this specific survey, which was done by Software AG, found that 95% of companies consider sustainability a top priority. So they asked why are only 84% admittedly using sustainability as a forefront strategy within their digital transformation. And so the problem that they sourced here that I want to get your opinion on is that 84% of companies still see digital sustainability and transformation as a separate initiative from the main ERP or technology implementation. And that leads to a complete breakage in the overall full holistic conception of the project. So that's the piece that I wanted to kind of talk about, is sustainability, or as a lot of times we heard it say, maintenance, optimization, all of those different pieces of kind of what happens after the technology is implemented. Should that be an afterthought, or how should you include that in the main project planning in phase 0?
I think for organizations that are focused on that and value sustainability, of course, they should be doing that in sort of the phase 0 planning stages of a transformation. And I think, to your point, there's a couple different ways to think about sustainability. I mean, there's the sustainability of the actual deployment and how self-sufficient you are with technology and how efficiently you're deploying technology and that sort of thing. But there's also the sustainability impact that technology can have on your organization in general. So if you're able to manage consumables more effectively, and the carbon footprint and the impact on the environment and that sort of thing, because you have better data, better technology to help you manage that, then you certainly want to track that business value in that regard as well. So I think I agree with you. I just think there's two different layers that you want to think about sustainability, both in terms of technology deployments themselves as well as the impact of the organization longer term.
Absolutely. And some things they talk about here in this study is the lack of overall employee-based metrics in a digital transformation, and the fact that many employees or team members don't actually know what they're working to achieve from a metric standpoint. So I wanted to hear kind of your feedback around what's the importance of having alignment and actually defining key metrics that is now dispersed and communicated to your entire organization so that you're moving towards specific metric-based goals.
Well, I think first and foremost is just to ask that question. I mean, it's as simple as your question sounds. A lot of organizations don't ask themselves or their teams that. And so I think being aware of and cognizant of what our expected business value is and where we expect to get the business value and what the metrics are that we're going to hold ourselves accountable to, those are all really important to not only justify the project, but also to help ensure that we're delivering business value longer term. So I think it's hugely important, but it's it's really interesting to me though how few or how rare it is to hear an organization go through that, because a lot of times they think, well, why do we measure it? We don't need to measure it. We know we have to do this project either way. So what's the point of measuring it? And even if you know you have to do it because your legacy product is broken or it's being sunset by a vendor or whatever, that's still not a good reason not to define those metrics and set the targets. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to realize a business value that you could get out of the system. So it's hugely important.
And yeah, and not even defining that at a project or an executive level, but communicating that through the organization. Yeah. So there is, motivation to move towards that. And I want to turn to the audience just for a quick second and asking about the sustainability by design. Do you feel as though that's something that should be a main priority in a transformation, or is that something that can be an afterthought? So I want to get your feedback as well, because again, we'll kind of pull all of that information and analyze it and see what we kind of take as a holistic recommendation.
Yeah, be curious to hear the feedback from the audience as well.
Well, let's go into the value of digital transformation. And I really want to share this as it's called the Show Me the Money article, which is really interesting. And what it does is it breaks down a recent study that was done by McKinsey. And it actually, so I have to tell you this since you are, a pop culture expert. So Cuba Gooding Jr. played Rob Tidwell in Jerry Maguire, right? So yes. He was not just voicing his concerns about committing to a sports agent played by Tom Cruise in this case, but also questioning Cruise's commitment to his overall value. So that's an interesting way to look at digital transformation and actually the lucrative value that it brings to organizations. So a few things
his
I want.
Quan? Is this where you're going to get into are you going to get into the Quan? Do you remember that scene from
yeah, right,
Jerry Maguire where Rod Tidwell says you don't have the Quan, or you're missing you're looking for the Quan, is the way he describes the value of life or whatever he was talking about there.
Well, while I do that, in the comments here, put the Quan of digital transformation. I wish we had the rights to that clip because I would put it in there, but you can Google it to see kind of what we're talking about, but add that to the comments so that we can address that. But basically, what we're looking at here is really how do you create hard value in looking at a digital transformation. So I just want to share some specific stats that these findings from McKinsey's corporate performance analytics, they actually look at banks. And so there's a specific niche that they're looking at within this project that they use as an example. And I think banks is an interesting example because they are very hard metric ROI focused. So when they look at financial metrics, they look at total shareholder return, growth, expenses, all of those different things. So when they ran a blind assessment, they were pretty struck by the findings. So here are the findings. Digital leaders are creating much more shareholder value than, as they call them, laggards. So basically the ones that aren't modernizing their overall IT or technology infrastructure. So between 2018 and 2022, digital leaders achieved annual total shareholder returns of 8 versus 6% for the laggards. Leaders also had a significantly better return on pre-tax tangible equity, growing from 16% in 2018 to 20% in 2022, versus a more moderate growth for the laggards, which was 14 to 15. So they outperformed basically legacy organizations with new digital transformation pieces. And so that, they argue, is creating hard value around digital transformation. As we just talked about metrics, we have this group of laggards or legacy system holders versus the newer digital transformation organizations. So my question to you is, we look at hard metrics and value. Can you create that in a legacy environment, or are you really going to have to go to a newer SaaS-based system and transition to that in order to keep a competitive advantage in your marketplace? We use banking as an example here, but I'm wondering, is that going to be a main evolution as we move into 2024 about what that looks like as far as creating a competitive advantage and staying relevant with your customers?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's interesting to hear those metrics because I don't believe I've seen any studies that tie digital transformation and modernization to shareholder value, sort of like that end result that a lot of public organizations are trying to deliver, or publicly traded organizations are trying to deliver. And most organizations are trying to deliver business value in general. And so anytime you can tie or connect the dots between a digital initiative and actual end value, I think that's super important. I think a lot of times we ourselves too, as consultants, we focus on like the operational metrics and the things that are getting delivered at the more operational level, but seeing how it affects the end state of shareholder value is super interesting. And I think the key there, I'd love to see the study or the data behind the study to understand, like, is there a correlation between the type of technology that was deployed, whether it was SaaS or cloud or, on-prem or best of breed versus single systems? Are there any correlations between the type of technology deployed, or is it that these companies just so happen to deploy technology in a way that's very much aligned with what their business value is and their business value proposition? In which case, that might suggest that it had less to do with the technology itself and more to do with the alignment of the use of technology in that way. So I've got more questions and answers, I suppose, for you on that, but it's very interesting for sure.
Yeah, you know what? It's such a dense article that I might send it to you and we can go into a few more pieces next week, because it also goes into they took 200 large-scale digital transformations and specifically AI transformations and isolated 6 core capabilities that rewired these banking companies that actually did go into a digital transformation. So I think I might save that for next week to go through each one of those, and we can kind of go through, because there's a bunch of charts. So I might ask you to kind of post some of those on your social media, and we'll post it on Third Stage as well to kind of get a more collaborative piece of feedback. But this is a really dense article and a newer study that I think it deserves a part 2, if you will.
I like it. Yeah, for sure. That's something we should for sure dive into. Well, good. Well, that's good stuff. I appreciate the topics and especially the focus on business value and metrics. I think that's super interesting and good stuff. So we'll look forward to diving into that in a little bit more detail in a future episode as well. Well, good. We're gonna shift gears here, and we're going to bring our first guest onto the show to talk about digital and tech trends in 2024. What are the things you need to be aware of and thinking about as you define a digital strategy for the coming year and years? We're going to have AV, who is the CEO and founder of a company called Avero Advisors, who by coincidence is also an independent and tech agnostic consulting firm that happens to focus on the public sector. We're going to have him on the show, and he and I are going to talk about digital and tech trends for 2024. So stick around. We're going to bring AV on the show, and then later we'll share with you the first 2 chapters of my new book called The Final Countdown, which is available for pre-sale right now on Amazon.com, and it'll be released. If you buy it now, you get the discount. It'll be released on August 25th, and you'll get the electronic copy at that point, or the soft copy at that point. So be sure to stick around. Later in the show, we'll share with you the first 2 chapters of that book as well. So we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control. We'll be right back.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting and your host of Transformation Ground Control. I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or a free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management, or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode.
But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 134. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. I suppose I need to stop saying Twitter and call it X because that is what it's called now, but it'll always be Twitter in my mind. So apologies for my outdated definition of that social media platform. But point being, you can find this episode or this podcast on that platform as well. So I'm excited for our next guest. He's been on this podcast, I believe, once before. He is the CEO of a fellow peer technology agnostic consulting firm that focuses more on the public sector. We do private and public sector, mostly private sector. He does exclusively public sector and government types of work in the technology space. His name is AV from a company called Avero Advisors, and we're going to have him on the show to talk about digital and tech trends to be aware of in 2024 and beyond. So all that being said, AV, welcome to the show.
Hello, audience. My name is Abhijit Verekar. Just go by AV. I'm the founder and CEO at Avero Advisors. We do digital transformation and ERP consulting for state and local governments across the U.S. We're based here in Maryville, Tennessee, and I see that Katie Kerr, our client, is on. Hi, Katie. And excited to be here talking about trends for 2024. Gosh, already.
I know it's already time to start thinking. We don't want to jump the gun too much, but companies come up, organizations come up on Q4, and that's where you tend to get real serious about planning for the coming year. So we thought it'd be a great time to have the conversation. And one thing too, I'm going to ask you about Avero Advisors in just a moment. Maybe tell us a little bit about that. But before I do, I have to maybe share with the audience, our companies have two things in common. One is that we do, we both do technology consulting. We're both independent and tech agnostic. Secondly, we both made the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies, you for the third time, us for the second time in a row. So congratulations.
Thank you. And you too.
And then third, I guess there's three things we have in common. Thirdly, we are both of our companies are sponsoring or co-sponsoring the upcoming Stratosphere 2023 event, which is in Denver, Colorado. In fact, I'm going to share with you a link right here. You can see on your screen. If you go to stratosphere2023.com, you can register for the in-person event in Denver, Colorado. AV and I will both be there along with many other speakers. So be sure to check out the website. And today is actually the deadline for the early bird pricing. And you save a lot of money if you register by the end of today. And I'm not just saying that in a salesy kind of way, like, buy today and you save X amount of money. The deadline is actually August 15th to get the early bird discount. So just coincidentally here today. So be sure to check it out and hope to see many of you there in person. That's stratosphere2023.com. So we've got a lot in common. Our two companies have a lot in common. Maybe tell us a little bit about your background in Avero too, just your upbringing and that sort of thing.
Sure thing. So I grew up in India, and I moved to the States in 2022. And growing up in India, if you've got the grades, you're expected to go to med school or engineering, right? So around 15, I made the decision to tell my parents that I don't want to do that. I want to be a chef. But I was always they lost their mind at me for the very first time, I think. And that wasn't a great idea. So the compromise position was that I went to get degrees in accounting and finance. But I always had a technical bent. Like I was the kid that opened up radios to see what was inside, put them back together. And I also started a tech company in Goa, my hometown, when I was 18. And we built websites for people that didn't have computers or didn't know what the internet was. So it was just bad timing. But fast forward to getting my second master's degree in finance, and I realized I don't want to work in accounting or finance. And I stumbled upon the world of ERP consulting and digital transformations, where I could really use both sides of my brain to sort of build a career out of helping people redesign processes and modernize using technology. So that's what my background is. And in 2016, I started Avero Advisors to focus on the local government in the U.S., in Maryville, Tennessee. And my idea was that, and still is, that our clients are underserved. I know yours are, especially from a consulting perspective. There's a lot of software vendors out there, and every day our clients are batting away phone calls and emails from thousands of vendors saying this is the product that's going to change your life, but they have no idea because they have day jobs. They've been, mayors, they're police officers, they are city managers that don't necessarily have the in-depth knowledge, and that's where we come in. So Avero focuses on helping those clients cut through the noise and modernize their processes.
Right. And it's interesting because you and I met, and technically we're competitors, right? Like we are competing for to do the same kind of work. But then we learned after
Yeah.
getting to know one another, like we can actually coexist and maybe even get along and maybe even collaborate on some
Yeah,
stuff. So
we have been collaborating digitally and with business, so it's been great, Eric.
yeah, it has been great partnership between our
Mhm.
our two firms. So I want to turn to the audience too, and thank you for everyone for dropping in the chat where you're from. We've got people from all over the world, as I mentioned, Vietnam, Denver, Colorado, city of Maryville, India, Anthem, Arizona, Dallas, Texas, Raleigh, North Carolina, Saudi Arabia, Johannesburg, South Africa, India, Turkey, India again. So thank you everyone for joining all over the world, especially at odd times of the day and evening for those of you there in different time zones than us.
And happy Independence Day in India.
Yes.
15th of August, yeah. It's a good
Yeah,
day.
yeah, actually today is Independence Day in
It
India.
is.
I did not know
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
happy Independence Day to everyone that's either in India or from India. So it's a very interesting coincidence there. Well, good. And again, feel free to drop in the chat as well, whatever stream you're watching on, any questions you might have, and we'll get to those questions as well. But I'm going to start with a few basic ones just to get us started here, AV. And I guess just to start, when you look at 2023 so far, we're not through with 2023, but we're far enough in that we kind of know how things are shaping up. What are some of the biggest trends that you saw materialize in 2023, or the ones that you're most excited about that you really saw emerge and become more reality here this year?
So a few things, right? We focus on local government. So we went to the GFOA conference in May in Portland, had a good, decent presence. We had a booth. We met a lot of interesting clients and prospects, and a few things stood out. One is the reinforcement that the world needs third-party truly independent consultants. A lot of CFOs came up to me and said, well, we've been working with so-and-so vendor that I can't name that claims to be third-party, but they're not. They always recommend a certain vendor. They don't really study our processes. They've given us copy-paste deliverables. So it was heartening to see that truly independent consulting firms like ours have a place and a solid opportunity here. The second thing is that, especially in my field, local governments, the field has been dominated by one or two vendors over the last 20 years, especially in the mid-market sector. And we're seeing a lot of interest from the big boys, Oracle, Workday, NetSuite, OpenGov's coming up. A lot of new players coming into the market that's giving our clients a lot of choice, which is good. And the third thing is the emergence of artificial intelligence. Often used word that's kind of turned into a buzzword, but we're actually playing with some data sets and trying to help some clients put up proofs of concept to see how it can really improve lives for the executives and people doing the work. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, those are similar trends to what we're seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly the rise and the rise of the need for independent tech agnostic consulting and advisory services. I think that is a trend that is continuing to develop. And as firms like Avero and Third Stage, as companies like ours become more prominent and more well known, and people just know that this is an option, I think there's more, obviously more demand. A lot of times, organizations don't realize you have these third-party tech agnostic options out there until they meet someone like you or I and learn about our companies. But a lot of people still don't know that this whole segment of the market exists. And then AI, that is something that's becoming more and more prevalent, especially with ChatGPT and DALL-E and some of the consumer-facing usage of AI. So that I think is what's bringing it into the mainstream for people in general, and that's sort of bleeding over into the enterprise space as well. But I'm curious to hear from you, on the AI front. That's one, if I had to pick one tech trend that seems to be accelerating the most, it seems like that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear from you, in a government/public sector sort of environment. That's not usually what you think of, or what I think of when I think of an early adopter of AI. But it sounds like you have some clients that are leveraging AI. Can you give some examples of how some of your clients are starting to use AI in their day-to-day operations, or how they will be?
Yeah, and I'll address the surprise element, right? Governments have the unique advantage of being behind the times, and sometimes by design. They are 2 or 3 generations behind. They're still using older technologies. So when they do get leadership that's interested in modernization, they can leapfrog. They can learn from the private sector. They know what frogs have been kissed and should not go there, so they can leapfrog. So 5 years ago, it was the leap to SaaS, right? Our clients that were on AS400s, green screens, didn't have to go through on-premise ERP implementations. They didn't have to employ a bunch of programmers in their basements to build a system for them anymore. They just moved from the homegrown AS400s, green screens to the SaaS environment. I think it's a similar moment. The clients now that are, you won't believe this, but they're still on green screens. They're now moving to SaaS environments that are AI enabled. We're doing a lot of AI enabled consulting to speed things up, to button up things quicker, to study business processes and mine business processes. And I think the biggest impact is going to be on the reporting side, because we see successful implementations that go live and the system's in production and it's working, and yet it doesn't do any kind of meaningful reporting for the end user, for the executive, right? You have to old school ask somebody to build your report or create your own dashboards, and it's just a cumbersome process. I think that piece is getting short circuited. It's going to get there's going to be a shortcut between data and reporting that will not involve writing custom reports. I'm really, really excited about natural language processing, natural language reporting, where a non-techie executive can just ask questions of the system through a bot or through Alexa or Siri and get the answers they need right away. And that's something that I'm starting to see in our clientele.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And that conversational aspect of accessing information and data, it seems like that's sort of a low-hanging fruit for a lot of organizations. If they don't know where to start with AI, maybe they like the concept of AI, they've heard all about it, maybe they've tested it with ChatGPT and whatnot. But the question becomes, well, how do you apply that to the enterprise? And those seem to be some of the low-hanging fruits. I'd be curious to hear from the audience too, where you're seeing AI being used, or are you seeing AI being used with your organizations or companies you work with? Love to hear from the audience where you're seeing AI or maybe any other emerging tech being used in different creative ways. We're here with AV talking about digital and tech trends to be aware of in 2024 and beyond. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology-agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 134. My name is Eric Kimberling, here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. And you can also go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to get access to past episodes and current episodes of the show as well. So we're here with AV talking about digital and tech trends in 2024 and beyond, and the things you should be aware of and the things you should know as you define your digital strategies for 2024 and beyond. So let's jump back into the conversation. Where do you see AI going? I know, before this discussion, before we went live, you were talking about how you're kind of knee deep in some AI aspects of your client work right now. Where do you think AI is going to head in the coming, in 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, I think so. The fallacy of AI is that it's only GPT or it's only conversational. A lot of this has been in the works for decades, right? You have pioneering companies like Microsoft, especially, that they have spent a lot of money and time on it. And then they opened up ChatGPT to us 6 months ago, and that's what they want us to see. So there's a lot going on in the background that's coming up that honestly, even, you and I are not so aware of, but we'll find ways to make it useful. That's our job. So where I see it going is in customer service. We're going to see a huge improvement. Again, back to my clients, right? A lot of them are public housing agencies that rely a lot on paperwork, that rely on case management, they rely on social workers to get their work through. And these people are constantly at a window talking to people, interacting with them. And given the labor market we're all in, they're facing turnover as much as we are. So a caseworker of 20 years just left to go work at a software company. A caseworker that worked there for 15 years just retired. So you're losing knowledge and the ability to deal with people that are seeking support in bad times. So we're going to see a lot of those conversations turned into AI conversations with the ability to dig through decades worth of data immediately instead of having to have people come back and then deal with their application. So speed of delivery will be enhanced in the next couple of years. In the next 6 months, if we do this right, as consultants, as clients, we're going to see natural language reporting right away. Right? Microsoft's going to release Copilot here pretty soon. I don't know if you've seen it on LinkedIn, but they have a little design button now that for non-creatives like me, it's a godsend, right? You just click a button and it creates a graphic for you. So in small ways and large, AI is going to take over. It already is taking over our work environments. And I don't say that in a negative way. It's never to me, it's not going to replace a human worker because you still need somebody to set strategic direction, to interpret data, to deal with people more than anything else.
Yeah. I think that's interesting how AI could really be used as a way to replace that dependency on tribal knowledge, because you've got those people like the caseworkers you're describing or the examples you describe, people that have been around for 15, 20, 30 years, and replacing that knowledge is very difficult. And while you don't want to assume that it's okay to have attrition and it's okay to lose people, you always want to do what you can to build a culture where people stay and want to be there, that sort of thing, of course. But knowing that you have technology that can hedge against that risk of losing some of that tribal knowledge is a pretty big deal. It could be a game changer for a lot of organizations.
Yep, truly.
So here's a question from Kyler on LinkedIn, and this is a good question. She asked it in the context of the public sector, but maybe we could cover both angles, public and private sector. But what is the state of best of breed tech in the public sector? Will we see focus areas in government tech, or kind of what is the state of best of breed in general from what you're seeing with your clients?
So I think transparency is a big deal with our clientele. We've seen a lot of open data portals that have been deployed in the public sector, yet they still rely on older technology. So that's a cool thing. You may have a broken green screen AS400 in the back, but companies like OpenAI and OpenGov, OpenGov will help you plug into those data sets and provide meaningful reporting on historical data. Now, there's a lot of implementation effort that goes in there. So I don't know what they're doing on the AI front to automate and make it speedier. And then the other thing we're seeing is customer service, like I mentioned earlier. And in terms of public safety, we're seeing a lot of modernization and upgraded environments in terms of automation, transparency. Again, we're working with large cities, police department to overhaul all of their systems, and they're still doing work on carbon paper. But the same leapfrog effect can be found there, right? They're going to go with an AI-based SaaS cloud-hosted records management system that talks to other systems. It might seem like, this was 20 years ago for those in the private sector, but my clients are still dealing with these things.
Right. Yeah. It's very, very interesting. And I think the good news for enterprise buyers and organizations that are thinking about new technologies is you have so many options now. You have these best of breed options that address specific functional needs or specific industry needs, but you also have sort of the single integrated enterprise-wide ERP systems as well. And then you also have platforms as well. These platforms like, Salesforce's Force and other
HubSpot, all of these things.
HubSpot and Palantir and Snowflake are sort of the interoperability / business intelligence / analytics sort of model. So you've got all these different niche categories that you can be pursuing. And it's interesting because it's sort of like it creates a tension, I think a healthy tension in the marketplace where you always have, these pros and cons and trade-offs and these upstarts that are trying to address deficiencies in the market. And it just gives you a lot of options, but it can also be overwhelming for organizations that don't know where to start. So be curious to see where that goes in the future.
Well, and there's also the not the fight, but the tension between different functional areas, which is why I go back to us not being necessarily technology consultants. Yes, we are, but how many times have we done therapy and change management more than the technology? So that doesn't go away no matter what AI you use or how advanced your systems are. So that leads me to, we had a conversation yesterday with a new client that talked about, well, we're in this for a organization-wide ERP system, and we have this one pocket in our organization that wants to buy a standalone best-of-breed solution. How do you deal with this? And our response to that was really, you don't deal with it. You let the chips fall based on your requirements and what your integration points are. And who knows, there might be a best-of-breed solution. So I think the understanding that one specific system can't do it all for you is also blossoming. But at the same time, it can be a fallacy because you really need to look at your operations and your requirements before you make those decisions. You can't go at it from just the software perspective.
Yeah. And that's, as much as technology is changing, it seems like the non-technological components of transformation are not changing in some ways, for both better and for worse. It seems like, on one hand, organizations are not paying enough attention to some of the non-technical aspects, especially as technology becomes more advanced. It becomes easier just to focus on the technology and not to worry or to neglect some of the other pieces. But on the flip side, we need to change the way we think about transformations. And yes, we need to be aware of technology. And to your point, we need to be technologists and understand what these technologies can do. But what's even more important is understanding the business and how we can merge the two and integrate the people, the process, and the technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great points there. Here's a question from Dennis, who is also from India, and I hope you're enjoying your Independence Day in India, Dennis. But Dennis on LinkedIn asks about adversarial attacks. How would or could artificial intelligence manage that? Are you seeing anything on that front yet in terms of cybersecurity and using AI to help mitigate some of that risk?
Yeah, I think AI has been around in that sense for a few years now. Using things like SIMs, you can predict or at least be notified of oncoming attacks before they actually happen. So a lot of that is going on. What you might see as advancements is how to respond to it, right? Again, going back to the labor shortage or who knows where people are flocking to work. But in the tech sector, you have a dearth of high-skilled labor that can respond to those attacks. And I'm not talking about cybersecurity agencies or companies. Think about your agency that just got notified that they're under ransomware attack. And you have a rookie under 1 year help desk person that's now at 3 a.m. manning the desk responsible to respond to this and cannot get in touch with anybody. How do you respond to that? So AI will help in, again, knowledge retention and using chatbots. They can quickly get to policies and procedures, protocols on how to respond to something. And all of that can be built in on the back end. So I saw a demo the other day that was reading data from CrowdStrike into a state's help desk system. And if you and I were to be plopped in there at 3 a.m, Eric, we could quickly search for the state's specific protocols, policies, and things to do when a certain kind of attack happens or incident happens. And I think that's going to be pivotal because you can now sit anyone there that's not necessarily a super technical person to at least respond at level 1.
Yeah. That's back and sort of back to your customer service point too. So it's that same sort of functionality or ability to create that human-like interaction that could help on the IT support and the cybersecurity side of things as well. We're here with AV talking about digital and tech trends to be aware of in 2024 and beyond. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the 2021 Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how to take your transformation to the third stage of success.
I'm gonna leave it all out there and I'm gonna leave it all out there.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 134. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. And you can also go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to get access to past episodes and current episodes of the show as well. So we're here with AV talking about digital and tech trends in 2024 and beyond, and the things you should be aware of and the things you should know as you define your digital strategies for 2024 and beyond. So let's jump back into the conversation. What about, here's another question from Kyler. This is a really interesting one. Kyler is interested in AV's thoughts on emerging markets globally. How can government support infrastructure development to promote technology implementations? So maybe if we sort of broaden that and just look at government involvement in AI or the way technology is implemented, can or should the government be involved? Not to get too political, and I know every government throughout the world is going to have a different philosophy on this.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious in general, do you think government will need to play a role in helping these sorts of technology deployments be more successful and or hedging the risk of the displacement of AI on the labor force and that sort of thing? Or what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, you can't answer that without getting a little political. But, the internet and everything we do now, that's our livelihood, was started by the government in some form or another, right? The DARPA projects and the web projects. Yes, the research and private institutions had a lot to do with it. But again, the funding came from the government to kickstart these things. I think we're at a similar point in the deployment of broadband. A lot has been talked about, the access, the inequality. And I know that through the infrastructure bill, there's a lot of money being spent on fiber optic deployments. And I've been in many meetings talking about these deployments, and there seems to be no cohesive plan on how to use those funds. In the end, if they're going to end up in the pockets of the large 800-pound gorillas in the connectivity market, then it's not going to do any good. So government has a big role to play today in digital equity. But my personal philosophy is that they need to be in the business of building infrastructure and not necessarily in the business of delivering broadband themselves. So that's one. And then on the AI side, all the horror stories you hear about how AI is going to kill us all and start nuclear war. Someone's got their finger on the button right now, right? It's not AI, it's a human. So right. There are guardrails we've put in place in the last 50 years for nuclear non-proliferation. I think the similar levels of care need to be taken with AI. And I've heard a lot of leading thoughts on how there needs to be a UN type organization that does nothing else but protect AI and the boundaries it sets. But who knows? I really don't know.
Yeah, and it's not dissimilar to what Elon Musk has said, for example. I mean, he's made comments about how he thinks that the development and the evolution of AI needs to slow down, and that the government, I don't know if he specifically said he thinks government should play that role, but he's sort of suggesting that someone, and I presume it would be the government, would need to step in and put those guardrails in place and make sure that we have a plan for what happens when X percent of the labor force potentially gets displaced in a society because of AI. Yeah. What are we going to do, as a society to protect those people and to, help with that adjustment? I think that's the part we don't know, and that we're still trying to feel out.
Yeah.
Let's see here. And another similarity, Kyler points out on LinkedIn that we both have birthdays that are close together. We're both August birthdays, I believe it is. Both Leos, although you're quite a bit younger than me.
I was going to say one of us is much older, but you gave yourself up.
But like someone said to me, like a fine whiskey or a fine wine, it gets better with time. That's what I'm telling myself now that I'm 50. And you are not 50, so I won't reveal your age, but it's
quite a ways to go.
Yeah, you got plenty of time to enjoy your youth. Well, good. How about so beyond those? So you talked about 3 trends you saw emerging and sort of developing in 2023. If you try to predict the future and use your crystal ball to think about 24 and beyond, not just with AI, but just tech in general, what do you think is going to change? What do you think is going to evolve? What's going to surprise us? Where do you see us headed here?
So I think the good news for us is the proliferation of the understanding that third-party independent consultants have a big role to play in this. A lot of our prospects, like I said, they don't know where to begin. They have the right visions. They have the right ideas. They want to get away from whoever vendor it is that's creating a bad environment for them. They want to modernize. They want to embrace all of these technologies. They don't know where to begin. And having a day job for a CFO of let's just say a school system or a county government or a transit agency, it's a full-time job. You're looking after billions of dollars in taxpayer funding. You don't necessarily have the time to just sit back and think about how you want to modernize your organization. So that understanding of our profession and how important it is, not just for visioning and strategizing, but also to handhold them through the process of selecting the right components of technology, how to use AI, how to deploy it safely, how to keep their data secure. All of that needs to be really well thought out. I think that trend is accelerating, and more people are understanding that thinking about digital modernization is like thinking about building a new school building or a police station. You can't just do it yourself. You have to have architects and contract managers and construction workers that actually get the work done and done right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very true. And you talked a little bit too about the labor market and skills shortages, labor shortages. It's interesting and surprising to me how the labor market has not really recovered fully from COVID. And I think it's permanently changed. I mean, I think there's something that has just shifted in the labor market as far as people's willingness to work. And a lot of people didn't return back to work. A lot of people left the workforce to become parents full time and or went back to school. And it just seemed like that COVID really disrupted the labor market in a way that we're still feeling the ripple effects. Similar to supply chains too. Supply chains are still sort of a mess in many ways. 3.5 years later, after the lockdown started. But I think those are sort of two realities too that we've got to continue to navigate. Is, to your point, if we're going through a transformation, chances are pretty high that we don't have a lot of resources internal, and we probably have a lot less internal staff than we used to. And even if we do, and of those resources we do have, a lot of them are working hybrid or remote. And how do you manage them and get them involved in a project when you're not in the same place? I mean, those are things that we all just have to continue to get used to and adapt to, it seems like.
Yeah. And the other thing too, Eric, is being on site is valuable, right? People have Zoom fatigue, and we like being on site. I know you do too. As far as practical, we want to be on site and look into the client's eyes and feel their pain and live and breathe the environment and the business practices and processes. And that just delivers better value. I think Zoom fatigue will be real. It's real now. People are over it. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more business travel and on-site presence next year. And of course, we'll have to, on our end, be diligent about building those costs into the pricing. But overall, I think it delivers better product and services, and I'm seeing that come back in force.
Yeah, likewise. And I think especially when you look at some of our clients in for example, the manufacturing or the distribution space, where you have shop floor workers, warehouse clerks, people that don't have the option to work from home, and we're all sitting here in our, in our offices talking about how we could be working at home and should we be working at home, and then 95% or whatever the world doesn't have that luxury or that option. And so to be able to empathize and be able to relate to these people that don't have that option, I mean, you sort of have to get out in front of them and understand what they do out on the shop floor and how their processes work. And to your point, you live and breathe their culture and their processes and their operations and their life, their day-to-day lives. I think that's all stuff that we tend to, I think we forgot a little bit about that human piece of it during COVID and got caught up amongst ourselves of whether or not we should be working from home or remotely, while at the same time realizing the world continued, most of the world continued to work in person, even during the peaks of COVID, because they had no choice. And so I think we've got to recognize that and kind of adapt to that going forward. Here's just an interesting comment from YouTube. This is from Zlatan on YouTube.
Isn't that a famous soccer player? What are you doing in the ERP world?
Is it? So you know more about soccer than I do.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe.
But he says, great stream, Eric. I'm a recent graduate who chose not to pursue finance, which was his degree, much like UAV, and decided to enter into the ERP world, where I'm now working for a Microsoft partner in a Business Central implementation company. So congratulations on
good move.
Career pivot. Sounds similar to your journey, AB. Going from finance to the technology side of things.
Yeah, the world needs people like us that understand finance and accounting and the back end of what you're trying to do with software, because you can't just rely on developers and engineers when it comes to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very true.
Football. Yes.
We erroneously referred to it as soccer, and Kyler corrected us. It should be football. So thank you for that correction. That's the American in us both, I suppose, that are drawing that out. So let's talk a little bit about tech trends. I think a lot of the tech trends you've talked about are universal across public sector and private sector. Is there anything that you think is affecting government in the public sector differently than the private sector? You talked about the leapfrogging dynamic, which is super interesting, that in the public sector, there's maybe a little bit more of an opportunity and a luxury to be able to leapfrog, where they are today and where they're going to be in the future. That might be a little bit different with government, to where they're taking some bigger, not risks, but they're taking bigger gambles or bigger, they're investing more heavily in technology in some ways. What are some other things that you see that potential differences between private and public sector in terms of trends and where they're headed?
Well, in general, the public sector tends to follow the private sector. So if things have worked for the private sector well, it's going to get adopted. But things like, again, it's slower adoption rates, but they're getting there. Things like using GIS as a central technology for running everything in a city is starting to become more prevalent. GIS for everything, customer service to paying your tax bills to your water bills, all of that's becoming front and center. And again, it might seem like, well, it should have happened already. Well, it hasn't. And slowly it's proliferating. And then back to my point on customer service, I think it's prevalent everywhere, right? We're working with a city here in the South that really struggling with permit applications. They have a system, everything's online, but it's been designed by engineers and IT folks, well-meaning. But if I go on to apply for a permit, it'll take me an hour just to create the accounts they want me to create. So it's not very intuitive. So there are players out there that are finding these opportunities to become the middleman, right? So an ERP system will take 2 or 3 years to implement in a worst case. And the mayor's up for election this year and really wants to fix their whatever process, permit improvements, customer service, anything that lets people do business with the city or the county from home or elsewhere without having to come into City Hall. So there are vendors and software that kind of become this mid layer. They'll take your existing processes, plug it into your existing older systems while you're looking for newer systems, and create a modern looking facade for data intake and interaction with the data. This isn't a new concept. I mean, we've had front-end forms for many years, for decades.
Right.
But the workflow capabilities of these tools are pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's how companies and vendors like Palantir and Snowflake have really, they've really tapped into that need in the market, which is, okay, maybe you're not going to replace your back end ERP systems overnight, and most organizations are not going to. So what are your options? And they provide a good option and alternative for companies that either are going to take some time to replace their systems, or, maybe they're going to preserve a certain amount of their legacy systems, and they just want that sort of single source of truth and data source, to have that visibility into multiple systems. We're here with AV talking about digital and tech trends to be aware of in 2024 and beyond. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
When things are big that should be small, who can tell what magic spells will be doing?
Are you looking to stay ahead of the curve in the ever-changing landscape of digital transformation? Then you need our newly released 2023 Digital Transformation Report. This comprehensive report covers the latest trends, technologies, and strategies to ensure your digital transformation is optimized for success. The 2023 Digital Transformation Report is packed full of proven methodologies and insights from experts in the independent digital transformation field. You'll also receive practical insights on how to implement digital transformation strategies within your unique organization. This free report is available for download on our website at thirdstage-consulting.com under our Thought Leadership section.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 134. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. And you can also go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to get access to past episodes and current episodes of the show as well. So we're here with AV talking about digital and tech trends in 2024 and beyond, and the things you should be aware of and the things you should know as you define your digital strategies for 2024 and beyond. So let's jump back into the conversation. Here's a question that I think is a super interesting one, especially it's sort of jumping back a little bit to AI, or it is jumping back to the AI thread, but I want to come back to this because I think it's really important. This is from Bill on YouTube. Bill says, what are your thoughts on AI in the healthcare market? How far do you think AI will affect patient customer experience in 2024? And I know you guys don't work a lot directly with healthcare, but I think you touch it a little bit just given your public sector work. Do you have any thoughts on that? It seems like that might be another industry outside the public sector that is really ripe for AI and some of the advancements that could happen in AI with all the, data and paperwork intensive aspects and the regulatory intensive aspects of healthcare. What are your thoughts there?
I think so. We don't work with healthcare directly, but we do a lot of work with health and human services, kind of related, right? How do you get welfare? How do you get healthcare benefits like Medicaid, Medicare quickly to people that deserve it is what we've helped some states with. So in that use case, the casework and the customer service aspect is very critical because you spend a lot of time intaking forms, doing interviews, giving people information, looking at past data. And in cases like not necessarily healthcare related, but public housing, you have a wait list of people waiting to get housed. And on the other hand, you have empty houses that these agencies sit on because they can't quickly process people. So in healthcare, I can see applications in diagnostics, right? Based on my personal history, health history, plug in it through some kind of AI engine, and the doctor can look at everything and without making guesstimates or guesses. And I'm not saying doctors do that. Some do. I've had, spent some time in the hospital in the last couple of years, but it didn't seem very data driven. It's training based and it's heuristics. I think a lot of that's going to get taken away with AI on the serving the patient side. And on the reporting side, of course, you're not looking at 15 different reports to find the one thing your insurance company asked for. On the patient side, I think that's what I'm most interested and excited about. On the healthcare side is just access to my own data.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and you think about, just how intense some of those processes are, and think about every time you go to the doctor and all the paperwork you've got to fill out again, even though you were just there
Yeah.
a year ago or whatever, and you've still got to fill out all this new paperwork, and just all the data that gets captured along the way. And I think AI, there's probably some great opportunities to not only streamline the process, but also potentially improve some of the outcomes of the diagnosis and the analysis and the human flaws that even doctors and professionals might have as far as
Mm.
misdiagnosing something, or being able to use data to look for patterns and trends to help solve
Right.
medical and health problems. I think there's a big opportunity there, both short term and long term, for healthcare as well.
Yeah. And I think ingesting data like DNA websites, right? We've all given, most of us have to Ancestry.com. Now you can buy additional services from them that tell you what risk you might be at based on your DNA and genetical history. So combining that with actual historical medical data would should produce some exciting, interesting results.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, So, given some of these emerging trends with AI and some of the other things we're talking about, some of the interoperability technologies, we talked about best of breed versus single ERP systems. Technology is changing fast, and I think it's fair to say it's accelerating, right? The rate of change with technology is not slowing down. If anything, it's speeding up. What do we need to do differently as organizations and implementation teams? How do we navigate that pace of change without losing sight of the non-technological stuff that you started to talk about earlier? What do we need to do different? I mean, if we were going to change something going forward in 24 and beyond, what do we do different to navigate all this?
I think it comes down to what outcomes you're looking for, and this is what we profess all day. Tell us about the outcomes you want. Forget about what systems you're looking at, and then based on a desired outcome, you need to back yourself into your technical functional requirements that then might match up with a specific system, and then treating people like people. Again, this is a tech blog podcast, but you and I can agree that it comes down, success and failure in a tech project, especially an ERP project, comes down to how well the people were managed, how well their excitement, their enthusiasm throughout the project, how well conflicts were managed, how well risk was managed. It all comes down to that. And if the product works at a basic level, it's going to work. So not losing sight of the people aspect is very important. It's one of our core values as a company. And I think that should remain a trend forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is one of those things that as technology continues to change, it's one of those things that it should stay the same, is you still need to focus on people, maybe even more so than you have in the past, because the impact is greater and the potential business value is greater than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Right. And then Kyler is here in the background, keeping us on track here, making sure we cover an important agenda item here, which is her question is, before you guys wrap up, and those that don't know, by the way, Kyler is part of the Third Stage team. She's my podcast co-host. But she says, before you guys wrap up, can we get a sneak peek into your collaborative session at Digital Stratosphere? So you and I are doing this. We've talked about it. We're still working on the details.
Yeah.
But maybe we can sort of give a sneak peek of what we're thinking as far as what this session that you and I are going to do together at Stratosphere.
So we've talked about similarities, right? Birthdays and things we like and the businesses we are in. There's a few things we disagree on. And we haven't really got into it on air. And I think that's what we're going to do at Stratosphere. I want to take you on in a debate on the things. There's not many, maybe 5 things that you and I have different views on when it comes to our businesses. So we're going to be debating.
Yes, it's going to be AV versus EK. It's kind of like an epic clash of the titans.
Yeah.
Let's battle it out on stage in front of everyone, and maybe let people pick a winner. I don't know. We haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, we'll take bets, but it's not physical combat. Just making sure, right?
Well, we don't know. We can't say for sure that it might turn physical. I mean, we might get super irritated with each other.
I know. Throw things at you.
But I think it's, one thing we've talked about too is, even on things we agree on, I think you and I are similar in that we see the gray areas on a continuum of options. And so I think sort of predefining a stance that we're going to take. Like, for example, we were talking about best of breed versus single ERP. You know, what you and I will pick a side, right? And we'll argue that side because you can make a pretty strong argument on both sides.
Yeah.
And so we'll have a moderator that'll say, okay, AV, what do you think? And you're going to say, you know, single ERP is the way to go. And I'm going to say, nope, it's best of breed. And here's why. And we're going to have a little debate back and forth on topics like that. So that's sort of what we're envisioning. It might end in physical mortal combat of some sort. We're not sure. Well, you'll have to attend to find out for sure. So that's another reason to come to Stratosphere. You hear different perspectives and all the nuances of decisions like that that need to be made. So I guess just looking forward then, what else should organizations be thinking about? If I'm on a project team or I'm part of an organization that's getting ready for a transformation in 2024, or maybe we're doing some initial planning now, or mobilizing resources, we're creating a strategy, maybe we're evaluating technology options. What are some of the other things that we should be thinking about as organizations and project teams as we enter Q4 and 2024?
So in my world, I like asking two questions. One is, why this, why now? Right? Why are you doing this? And what's going on? Who's pressuring you? Is there the council? Is there someone else? Why are you doing this now? You've been through life with crappy systems and bad processes for 20 plus years. And you were in charge, Mr. Mayor or city manager or CEO. Why are you doing this now? The second question I like asking is, who's in charge? We won a new contract, and it seemed like in my world, everything happens with committee, right? You have 20 people voting on your fate on whether or not you get the contract. So when we do, I like asking the question of who's in charge, because in a large scale implementation, there's going to be fights. There are going to be decision points. There are going to be points where you have to put your foot down. And there are decisions that us as consultants can't make for the organization. So it's really important that people have a sense of why they're doing this, why they're doing it now, what the outcome should be, and on a day-to-day basis, who's in charge on their side. Because, as consultants, we can make decisions at the project level. But if it's something that impacts the organization, the board, there has to be somebody there that makes the decision. And I think on the private side, you have the CEO, obviously. We have to tell our clients to put someone in charge, because it depends. Sorry, Kyler. Yes, get me that mug. But it depends on what the organization is made up of and how they're set up. And it's not always clear who the, grandmaster decision maker is.
Yeah. And and Kyler did suggest #it depends mug. We might start selling it on these podcasts.
Yeah,
let's do a limited time for $9.99. Buy this mug. But you're right. I mean, as technology changes and as the opportunities to deploy new and different and leapfrog sorts of technologies within an organization continue to advance and accelerate, it becomes even more important that we are aligned as an organization and that we have a clear strategy and plan to sort of cut through all the noise that comes along with new technology and bells and whistles, and just having a deliberate strategy and a deliberate pace at which you're going to go through the transformation. Because it can be easy, to your point earlier about leapfrogging technologies, it can be easy just to bite off more than you can chew and just go after AI and predictive analytics and a new ERP system and all this new stuff you could do that you may want to need to do longer term, but it's not going to happen overnight. So how do you pace yourself to make sure you're getting the most value and you're not disrupting the business more than you need to? I think that becomes even more important as time goes on here.
And that's where we come in, right? The first thing you do, and I think you guys call it phase 0, is just sit down and plan this. Whiteboard it, make Gantt charts, make plans before you launch anything. So you need to think this through. Right. Before you start biting.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you, AV. Great conversation. A lot of good stuff to think about as we plan for our digital transformations in 2024 and beyond. We're going to debrief from that conversation here in just a moment. And then later in the show, we're also going to share with you the first 2 chapters of my new book called The Final Countdown. But first, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 134. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. And Kyler, we just had AV on the show talking about some digital and tech trends in 2024 and beyond. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation?
Well, it's always a great synergy between you two. So it's just such great energy to have that conversation. We actually first met the Avero team at Inc. 5000 conference, as you mentioned. And it was so interesting because we were trying to decide, like, were we friends? Were we like competitors? Like, what were we? Like, what was our relationship status at that point? And we just found our way back to their team each time because there is just such a cultural fit of transparency, of technology agnosticism, of just wanting to help clients. I don't think a lot of people understand kind of the back end of your leadership style and AVs is that you really handpicked, both of you, your executive team, to make sure that they carried that culture with you. You both are very intentional about culture. So as if I had to request a part two, which, I always have to slide that in there, is talking about being executive and creating a culture of independence is something that I think would be a really interesting conversation for you guys, not only on the trending side, but also on building an intentional culture, because you do have such synergies in that area. That's why our teams work so well together, because it's such a good match.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I think you met these guys before I did, I believe. So because you were at the Inc. 5000 event last year, and I wasn't able to go, but yeah, that's how we met. Is we're both on the Inc. 5000 last year. They've been on it 3 years in a row. Now we've just now had our second in a row. So it was interesting though, as we got to know them. You felt like we should be sort of mortal enemies because we do the same thing, but then you realize, well, actually they're pretty cool people, and we don't overlap that much. I mean, we have similar business models, but they're focused on a different segment of the market than we are. So it works out pretty well, and we've collaborated on a lot of stuff here over the last year or so. So it's been a good relationship for sure.
Yeah, I think both of your intention are bringing the best specialties to your clients. That's the important part about that, is you're so client focused that you're always willing to reach out to either a system specialist or an entity specialist, like in the public sector in these areas. So that type of thing always makes sense in that approach. But when we look at kind of trends in the marketplace, I think I'm always so interested to hear AV's feedback that it's so modernized, because I don't know if it's just a misconception I have, but every government entity that, I've worked with on the technical front is in, the guppy lane in going to new technologies. It's really always been a huge, huge undertaking to get them even to a modernization system. So it's something that's always interesting to hear from him about being so forefront and looking at those more quote unquote emerging technologies, as opposed to just kind of the basic modernization of getting off a green screen or being able to automate manual systems that you needed to do really 20 years ago that the private sector has done. So I just find that interesting to hear from him on that front.
Yeah, that was probably the most surprising part of the conversation for me too, was the when he was talking about the fact that government entities oftentimes are going to be more likely to leapfrog and sort of jump, through multiple generations of technology to get to the current state or to the future state. And I would have expected sort of the opposite, that they're going to move slower, more conservatively, more incrementally. But he's saying no, because they're so far behind, they've got more ground to make up, so they're more likely to take these big jumps. And I thought that was super interesting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to consider in those leapfrogs, not only as we a lot of times do, which we work with the public sector all the time. So we definitely have that data to really look at that. But it's not only a cultural shift for your internal employees, which are often more tenured in the government sphere, but also your entire citizens that you're committed to serve. So now if you have a whole kind of digitization process of something like the DMV or something like that, then all of a sudden you have to look through that. I know I've talked about our illiteracy in our children's parent portal and things like that in the public school system that we laugh at ourselves at. But it's the same thing where you're not only influencing internal organization, but also constituents that rely on you for day-to-day needs and necessities.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much impact that has on society and people in general, and citizens and stakeholders of government entities it becomes a little bit easier to point to immediate potential business value and impact on society.
And I think when we do your debate, we should do because we always like to talk about doomsday, but the worst digital transformation you've seen kind of in the private sector that are often more expensive and, affect a lot of different tiers, but also the worst digital transformation in the public sector, and kind of have these scary stories. Since it is in October, we're getting close to Halloween here in the States. We can
good point.
Do some scary stories there and repurpose it for this podcast. So that's my plan. I like to moderate those things and just throw out whatever, I want to be able to ask, keep everyone on their toes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun to have that debate. And I think too, that, not only is it kind of a fun format to have that sort of debate, but it's also a good reminder that it does depend. I know we say that a lot on the show, and AV and I were, you were making comments in the chat during the discussion with AV that, we should create mugs that say it depends, hashtag it depends, but that's part of the fun of this.
Yeah.
Right. That'll be part of the fun of this event is, give me a topic and give me an angle that I need to defend. And it's a lot like debate club or whatever, but you can make strong arguments on both sides of these equations. And I don't even care which side of the argument you give me. I think it'll be fun to argue it and sort of look at one side, one myopic view, and then compare it to one other myopic view. And I think through that discussion, you find that, well, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, and you've got to kind of figure out where you fall on that spectrum. And that's really the whole point of that debate format that we're going to have at Stratosphere, which, again, you can see the speaker list in the agenda as it's unfolding and being worked as we speak. You can go to stratosphere2023.com, and you can also register at that site. And it's October 4th through the 6th in Denver, Colorado. I'll be there. You'll be there. AV will be there. Lots of other speakers will be there. Technology agnostic speakers as well as industry software vendors and peers and others outside of Third Stage will be there as well. So really look forward to that. And hopefully you all can join us there at Stratosphere in Denver, October 4th through the 6th.
Yeah.
So, good stuff. Well, we're going to get into the book too. The book, if you attend the session, you have the opportunity to not only get a physical copy of the new book called The Final Countdown, which is my first book, and it's been released for pre-sale on Amazon. You can also you can buy it now at a discounted rate, and when the book is actually officially released on August 25th, you'll automatically receive. You'll be the first to receive the electronic copy on Amazon, so be sure to check it out. But we're going to read a couple chapters of the first two chapters of the book here today on today's podcast. So I'm looking forward to that. So we're going to do that after we take a quick break. But first, we're going to take that break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Eric Kimberling, your host here on Transformation Ground Control. I want to personally invite you to our upcoming Stratosphere 2023 event. It's a conference that we host every year. It's a tech agnostic conference, features a number of independent technology agnostic speakers, both from Third Stage Consulting as well as from outside our company. We try to bring in the industry's brightest minds and the most objective minds to help you learn the things you need to know to make your transformation successful. We cover everything from digital strategy to software evaluation to change management to program management to process improvement, data and architecture migration, all that kind of stuff we're going to cover here in Digital Stratosphere. It's going to be October 4th, 5th, and 6th in Denver, Colorado. I'll be there. Kyler will be there, our co-host here on Transformation Ground Control, as well as others will be there. So be sure to check us out. We'll also have great opportunities for networking, for peer networking, as well as networking with speakers. we're also going to have great entertainment too. We'll have some happy hour networking events as well as live music from That 80s Band, which is my favorite cover band. They play all 80s stuff. So come enjoy that as well while you're at it. It's all happening in Denver, October 4, 5, and 6. You can go to stratosphere2023.com to learn more about the event. Be sure to register by August 15th to get the early bird discount, which is fairly significant. Again, stratosphere2023.com. Learn more about it. Hope to see you there. And in the meantime, hope you enjoy the rest of this episode of Transformation Ground Control.
But we're never gonna survive unless we get a little crazy.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 134. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham, and you can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and audio podcast platforms as well. You can also just go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to see all the different options you have to watch and listen. Again, transformationgroundcontrol.com, new episodes every week, so be sure to check us out. I'm excited to announce, and we're excited to announce, my first book is being released this month. In fact, you can pre-order the book now on Amazon. The book is called The Final Countdown. It's all about digital strategy and how to define the digital strategy that makes the most sense for your organization. It also contains case studies and examples through our years of experience helping clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And you can learn more about the book you can search for it on Amazon, or you can go to thefinalcountdown.com to learn more about the book. But rather than just tell you what the book is about, we thought we'd share with you the first two chapters of the book today. So Kyler is going to read the first two chapters and share with us the first two chapters of the book. So I'll hand it over to you, Kyler.
Thanks so much, Eric. I'm so excited to be able to share the first two chapters. I know we covered my favorite chapters last week. If you haven't listened to those, head over to last week's episode to check out chapters 9 and 10, which are my personal favorite. But today we're going to show I'm going to read chapters 1 and 2 so that you can kind of get a feel for the introduction of the book. Again, the book is available for pre-sale on Amazon and does launch on August 26th. So you are able to go on Amazon, search The Final Countdown, or look in the description language of this episode to order your copy for a promotional price. So definitely head over and do that. It's a great investment. Again, this book is called The Final Countdown: Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation by Eric Kimberling, and is read today by Kyler Cheatham. So let's get into it. Chapter 1, Don't Be a Case Study. On average, a company spends between 3 and 4% of annual revenue on a digital transformation project to optimize operations and automate processes. Nike's digital transformation in 2003 had the same intent and roughly the same budget. At the time, Nike was north of a $10 billion company, so spending $400 million on new software and everything that goes with it was fairly intuitive. What was not intuitive was their approach to implementation. If we were to ask Nike's leadership, this was nothing but a glitch in their system. It was simply something viewed as a speed bump in the grand scheme of their billion-dollar operations. The question here is, was it really a speed bump, or could it have been avoided in its entirety? The issues that Nike ran into were based on its inability to accurately forecast demand. They couldn't get the right product mix to their customers and were unable to fully grasp the demand to produce the right amount of product in each category. When they realized the fumble, long production lead times kept them from adjusting in time to mitigate the problem. Yes, it was the system that projected inaccurately. The system they implemented may have been too slow, maybe it didn't integrate well, or potentially it had some bugs that needed to be worked through. However, at its core, there were 3 holes in Nike's approach during this digital transformation. 1, Nike's planners were inadequately trained on how to use the system before it went live. 2, Nike didn't have a process in place for someone to check and confirm demand projections before the factory began production. Number 3, Nike missed the target in their testing efforts. A bug of this size should have been caught during tests prior to going live. Although there were some issues with the system, pinpointing the root cause of an ERP failure is done by peeling back layers of the subject's digital strategy. The success or failure of a digital strategy can be rooted in 3 pillars of digital transformation: people, process, and technology. Nike made mistakes on one component within each one of these 3 pillars, and it was reflected in a $100 million loss. Opportunities were missed through lack of comprehensive training, people, failure to implement revised workflows for newly launched software to keep demand planning systems in check, process, and neglect to run comprehensive end-to-end testing to ensure glitches were caught and addressed before going live with new software, technology. 3 characteristics define failure when it comes to implementing enterprise software. 1, it costs more time or more money than originally expected. 2, it delivers considerably less business value than anticipated. 3, it sees operational or material disruption that affects your business. Any of these 3 factors can be chalked up as an implementation failure. Unfortunately, Nike fell prey to all 3, and they are still working to optimize their operations as a result. It's not just Nike. Believe it or not, over half of all organizations fail based on these standards. It's more common than one would think, and most of the time it's due to a subpar or complete lack of digital strategy to guide the transformation through common pitfalls every company faces when implementing enterprise software. If there is no digital strategy, there's no North Star. There are various common pitfalls that nearly all organizations run into through transformation projects. It's these pitfalls that can make or break a company's success. Of course, we have instances such as Nike's 2003 crash and burn, but other pitfalls dance their way into projects and leave project leaders scrambling to make up for lost time, lost capital, and operational disruptions. The most common culprit is lack of alignment across all executives in which direction the rocket is going. Oftentimes, this lack of alignment can be rooted in either miscommunication or, generically, an internal bias. For example, a company's objective may be to grow its bottom line. We can get to that result in a few different ways. If the CFO of an organization has their eye on cutting costs, while the COO has the intention of driving less revenue, there's a lack of alignment there. Yes, each of these strategies serves as a pathway to drive the bottom line, but they are all unique pathways nonetheless. The way we drive revenue within a company looks different than the way we cut costs. This misalignment in the how is the very thing that many companies face. So before implementing any changes, we must ensure our team is aligned and facing the North Star as one cohesive unit as we formulate our digital strategy. That way, when it comes time for transformation, our team can ensure all sails are set in the same direction. The lack of project governance is another huge pitfall that organizations run into. There are various complex and expensive decisions that one must make when considering enterprise technology. While we are in the thick of a transformation project, we need guardrails to guide the challenges along the way. Formulating a comprehensive digital strategy can act as just as that, the guardrails. When it comes time to determine which software to select or which modules we'll need to integrate, we can refer back to our digital strategy and recall what we initially set out to do. If it supports our digital strategy and inches the company closer to its overarching strategic objectives, then do it. If it doesn't, then don't. Without a digital strategy, we neither garner executive alignment or will have the means of governance. Without digital strategy, we will get to the other side of the project and realize we are no better off than we were before. Whether we're classified as a Fortune 500 entity or a small business, the level at which we are prepared to launch a digital transformation is the level at which we will succeed. More time should be spent in planning and strategizing our roadmap than anywhere else in a given implementation project. The lack of an all-encompassing digital strategy guiding a software implementation puts us at risk and may only drive a wider gap between where we are today and where we want to go. Each segment of this book will discuss various considerations that can be used to integrate our overarching corporate strategy into our digital strategy. That digital strategy will be our roadmap to the execution of our digital transformation. This will help drive the understanding of how we can optimize current operations utilizing modern technology. In today's digitized world, our corporate strategy and our digital strategy are nearly one and the same, and we cannot define one without the other. Without a synergistic vision and execution plan, it will be difficult to garner buy-in from our team, make sound business decisions, or stay relevant in an ever-changing digital world we live in today.
We're here sharing with you an excerpt of the first 2 chapters of my new book called The Final Countdown. You can learn more about that book at thefinalcountdown.com, or you can search for it and buy it now on Amazon. The pre-sale is on as we speak, and the book will be released on August 25th. We've got a lot more of the excerpts to get to here, but we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control. We'll be right back.
Just tell me what you've got to say. Tell me, I've been waiting for so long to hear.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstageconsulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 134. I'm here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday, and we are here sharing with you the first 2 chapters of my new book called The Final Countdown. So let's jump back into the excerpts.
Chapter 2, Digital Strategy in the Area of All Things Digital. Today's world is driven by technology. Business operations are now defined by the level of technology that supplements the operating model. It's our enterprise software that helps track metrics, identifies opportunities, maintain organizations, and ultimately inches ahead of our competition. Without a sound digital strategy in place, competitors will overbear the market and our business will dwindle. Without a clear vision of what we want our company to be when it grows up and how we want organizations to operate, it will be difficult to pinpoint technologies that can be leveraged to help us get there. A clear digital strategy will be the horse before the chariot that powers our digital transformation. It will enable us to maintain a competitive advantage as the world becomes more and more technologically advanced. It has never been more important to align our corporate and digital strategies to reach our target operating model. Now, what exactly is a digital strategy? Let's simplify the concept and take the word digital out of the picture. As an executive team, we will likely have a strategy in place. Maybe our overarching strategy is to lead our industry in customer experience, or it could be that our company wants to build a reputation of having the quickest turnaround time in its deliveries. This overarching business strategy is what will help our organization stand out against others, and it will encompass the business aspect that our company is best positioned to execute. A digital strategy is a plan that an executive team must align on to determine how the company will achieve its established business strategy. How will we create a premier customer experience? How will we be able to deliver packages the fastest out of all other companies? How will we increase our bottom line? In the dark ages, or just 50 years ago, the how was entirely dependent on the people and process in place. Fast forward to the 21st century, and technology has developed as a third piece to the puzzle that helps organizations achieve their strategic goals. Our technology, process, and people within our organization are married, with one unable to fully function without the other. It's the tripod to success, and the detailed compilation of each of these elements is what formulates a digital strategy. Let's run through an example. Say an executive team has aligned on a strategic plan designed to drive revenue by cross-selling more products. They must take that specific strategic goal and work backwards to formulate a digital strategy. To formulate the digital strategy, they must have a stronghold on how adding cross-selling metrics will affect their sales team, how the selling and the closing processes will be altered to get there, and ultimately which CRM or customer relationship management tool will help them optimize their cross-selling and upselling efforts. Their digital strategy will be the detailed roadmap that outlines how they will manage the people, process, and technology in order to reach their company's strategic goals. Translating our corporate strategy to an aligned digital strategy is called strategic articulation, and it requires us to dig below the surface to understand the complexities of the organizational, operational, and technological side of our business. It also guides in planning tactics and practices that will optimize those elements. We do this through the development of digital strategy. One of the most important things to understand is that an effective digital strategy is tailored and aligned with an organization's specific needs. Every organization has a unique culture, distinct operations, different competencies, and varying technological needs. Each organization's digital strategy needs to reflect the differentiators within its business. So, how do we do that for our business? The key is to envision how technology will enable us to reach our greater goals and objectives as an organization. If we have a clear strategic plan on a corporate level, it becomes easier to identify and outline the digital strategy that will pave the path for us to get there. We can prime ourselves to start constructing a cohesive digital strategy by pondering these 6 considerations. Define who we are and where we're going. Alignment with corporate strategy and culture is the most important aspect of an effective digital strategy. Understanding who we are as an entity today and who we want to be when our company matures is the single most important step before formulating any digital strategy and ultimately implementing new software. If our digital strategy is aligned with our corporate strategy, then we have a high chance of success when we begin our digital transformation execution. With this in mind, our first step is to define our core competencies and overarching corporate strategy for the future. What is it we are trying to accomplish as an organization? What is our vision for how our operations will look in the future? Do we have the best customer experience out of all of our competitors? Do we make deliveries to customers in record time? The answer to these questions and other questions will set us on the path towards formulating the best digital strategy possible. Identify and improve processes and work streams. Once we understand where we are and where we are going as an organization, we will be able to pinpoint and prioritize the processes that need love. The processes that have bottlenecks or are too manual for efficiency's sake, and the ones that stand as the biggest barrier to where we are today and where we want to be in the future. It's these processes that need to adapt and change. In Chapter 5, we'll walk through the hierarchy of processes to help identify which processes to improve and how to improve upon them. Establish project governance. It is important to define what success means to us. This entails defining our key operational metrics, and those metrics should always be tied to the greater process and results that move the needle toward our corporate strategy. These metrics will also help establish and maintain project governance and risk mitigation strategies. Above all else, they will help us justify and optimize the benefits of our potential digital strategies. Build an organizational change management strategy to support our digital strategy. Our digital strategy won't mean much without an effective organizational change management strategy to support it. After all, technology is just technology without a team of people running the show and inputting effective data. Strategizing the human component of a transformation is one of the most important inputs and determinants of success. We'll get to how to define an organizational change plan in part 2, people. To summarize, however, an organizational change plan should address organizational readiness, change impact, organizational design, and other critical activities that most project teams and system integrators don't think about. Objectively consider the pros and cons of our potential software options. An organization has several potential strategic alternatives, each with its distinct trade-offs. No alternative will be perfect, so we should never adopt the mentality that upgraded technology or improved processes will fix everything. There is no silver bullet that will solve all problems in one poll, so it is important to objectively evaluate each avenue. The metrics and business case we define will help to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of each route we could take. For example, once we begin inching towards the software selection phase of a digital transformation, we may be weighing our options between SAP S/4HANA versus Oracle Cloud ERP versus Microsoft's Dynamics 365 as potential solutions. Each will have different implementation costs, different impacts on our organization, and different trade-offs. Each one will speak to the needs we have differently. The only way to make the right decision is to first prioritize our needs, our wants, and our expectations to evaluate each option objectively. We will discuss this further in Chapter 22. Outline an implementation plan that is aligned with our digital strategy. After we do our due diligence in planning, researching, surveying, and optimizing what is our current state, we can pull everything together to create an implementation plan that will guide our digital transformation execution. Our implementation plan will define how each technical element of our digital strategy will unfold. We will marry our organizational change plan, our business process improvement plans, and our system implementation plan together as one. These facets of digital transformation make up the formula for a cohesive digital strategy, and only then are we ready to move forward with our software implementation. As we cover the 3 pillars of digital strategy in the pages ahead, we will walk through each of the above considerations in more detail. By the time we've gone through all the concepts together, you'll walk away with a step-by-step action plan that will enable your organization to reach new heights, so as long as it's used in synergy with your corporate strategy. The best digital strategy for our organization looks unlike the best ones for most other companies. There is no generic answers, so it's important to objectively define what works for us. Only when we take an aerial view of each path will we understand which road is worth pursuing. Rather than spending money on implementing software, invest in a cohesive digital transformation strategy that will evolve and grow the organization. After all, that's what everyone is after, isn't it?
All right. Thank you, Kyler. Good stuff. Great to hear that book come to life, and hopefully that gives you a flavor of what to expect from my new book called thefinalcountdown.com. It's available now on Amazon.com. You can pre-order it now. It'll be officially released on August 25th, but if you pre-order it ahead of time, you'll save money. So be sure to check it out on Amazon.com, or you can go to thefinalcountdown.com as well. So thank you for sharing that with us, Kyler. Thank you to the audience for all the great questions and comments here today. We look forward to seeing you next week on Transformation Ground Control. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we will see you all soon. Pumpkin spice in the digital transformation space. That's what we're going to talk about here today. Just kidding.
In today's world, nope.
Anyway, we'll try to stay focused.
Done. Thank you.